161. Proof.
Well, welcome back to Barley and Hops. I'm George, the channel that dares to unlock the mysteries of home distilling. Yes, we do. Now, the Parrot head, as we so affectionately have labeled this, which is the audible talking proof and trail hydrometer. You've seen it in action. I already published a video. You can see that here. And that's the introduction to it. And now we're getting down. Let's put one together. Let's make one. So this is the part where we're going to do the physical assembly. And this will take me the rest of the day to walk through, but it really should not take you more than an hour or two, maybe, if you've got all your pieces and parts. Now, hopefully you've had a chance since the last video to collect all the parts that you need. If not, you can always go back to this video, of course, and rewatch it or pick up wherever it is you left off. Now, having said that, of course, please, I have to ask you, subscribe to the channel if you like what we're doing. Of course, like the video, comment below, give us some feedback, let us know what you think, let us know what's on your mind, and throw us a few ideas if you should desire. Let's get right to this. Now, if we take the Parrot head and we kind of break it down to its major components, we really end up with 4 major components, okay? One of them being the Parrot itself, which is something that you can already have. The second part is the Parrot head itself, which is the physical apparatus that goes on top of it, which houses your time of flight sensor. The third thing is the electronic components that you connect. And then lastly would be the programming. So let's take this step by step. And the first thing we're going to do on this video is we're going to assemble the Parrot head, which is not, it is precise, but it's probably the easiest thing to do aside from wiring it, which there goes 3 parts of it already. Really the most difficult part is the programming. Not difficult, just tedious. So let's do that. The first thing we need is we need the components for this. And let me slide all of this happy mess out of the way, because that'll be our guide. The first thing we have is we have the cap. And I've got one right here. So this is the cap that actually fits. It's the 1.5 inch cap that goes on top of our 1.5 inch inside diameter PVC pipe that has already been cut to 145 centimeters in length. Okay? And then I have this other small pipe that I need to explain. This really comes in handy. Here is the Parrot, which boasts an outside diameter of 1.5 inches. Well, the inside of this is 1.5 inches, but you know that there's a little bit of playroom in there. So what happens is that even though it's the same size, it does wobble just slightly. And we talked about that on the initial video, about shimming that up to make sure that that doesn't. Well, your under the sink drain plumbing, which is also a small plastic pipe, not as thick as PVC, but is used for just drains, is also a 1.5 inch, but it is tight enough that it fits around the top without. It gives you that snug fit. So what we want to do is we want to put this inside of this so that this goes around here and we have a snug fit. So what the problem is that this is made just a little bit thicker on the bottom for reinforcement. So what we need to do is we just need to hone this out a little bit. Now I've honed out this side slightly. I haven't gone all the way yet to show you. You see, now this fits in here, it fits all the way up to there. All I got to do is hone in a little bit further. Now we will cut this off because all of this is excess and not necessary. So I've got my drill and I've got a round sandpaper disc on the end of it, a barrel shaped. You can get these just about anywhere. If you insert that, and you just give it a run. And it gets in there pretty tight. There. Now, here's a tip for you. You know that once you use the sandpaper and it gets all gritty and of course everything that it's sanding off, that it starts to build up on there. I got this big eraser I got from Harbor Freight, and I use this on my circular sanders, on my belt sander, and on all the sanders that I have. What happens is it just turn it on and just lay that on there, and what that does is it cleans it. And so we just clean off all that stuff that is on there, and we make it new again. So just in the event that we have to go back in and get a little bit more, let's see how well we've done. Yeah, we've got to go in there and get a little bit more out. There, fits all the way in. Now on to the next part. You see, remember I told you we didn't need this part, so what we're going to do is we're just going to get rid of it. I'm just going to cut it off. Now, of course, there are several methods for doing this, and I understand you may have your own method. If it works for you, please use it. My gosh, this is the way I have found that works for me. You know, we say that all the time. I'm just going to use a hacksaw. Just cut that off. Just the hacksaw is just handy. Now, remember, we didn't need that part, and the other part that we really don't need is this part, the threads. You see, because the threaded portion is a little bit larger. So if we cut that off here as well, what we have is we have nothing. All we have left is the shim. Now, you know what? Thinking about it now, it probably would have been easier to leave that on there and cut that part off, and then cut this part off. But yeah, I guess it is what it is right now. I'm stuck with what I got, but I do have a solution. Let's move over to the Dremel sets. Now, with the face shield and the correct one selected, there's my button, I'll just chop this off right there at the bottom. There, now that we've completed that, all I need to do is take a razor and kind of clean that up a little bit because we got some rough edges. And then insert that into my tube. Now, there, and you see that. And the purpose for doing that and taking those threads off is to make sure that these are exactly the same height. Now, all I'll do is sit here and there's my line. That's my bottom of my window. And I'll make that window the size that I want to make it when I get over there. There. One window. Now, the other thing that I need to do is that, you know, this cap is going to go on the top here. And I've got wires that are going to run up the right side or the left side, wherever you put them. But in any event, they're going to have a way to get in here without any restriction, because for obvious reasons. So what I'll need is, I'll need at least a small slit down at least that far. And here's what I'll do. I'll cut that. See, I've got my window in the front, and to the right of that window, since I want my wires to run down the side, I don't want them to run down the front, I cut that slot. You see there? That's what it looks like. And then that way, when I put the cap on, the wires can run out here without being interfered with. Now, the next piece that we need to concern ourselves with is the cap. The cap has this bulge on the very inside here. Time to switch tools. I'm not going to use a face shield for this one because I need to be able to see a little bit better. Turn that one on. And this is just a grinding tool that's on the end of this Dremel tool. You can get a whole set of these. And you can see how that one pass all the way right straight down through the center, I just grind that all the way out to the level of the cap, and I'll go back and grind the other sides down. There, and after a couple of runs, you can see that it's all flat on the inside. It's not perfect, but it's flat. Now, our next task is to attach the time of flight sensor. And you saw the close-up of that on the other video, but you can see it's got a sender and a receiver mirror on one side, and it's actually flat on the other side. So that's the side, the flat side is the side that goes against the cap. So what I want to do is, because I want this to be adjustable. So now you can do it the way you want to, okay? Chances are you'll probably be okay if you just glued it there. But I put mine on a couple of, like 3 screws with a spring, and I'll show you that. In order to, so what I can do is I can turn the screws from above, and I can change the attitude of that time of flight sensor if I'm trying to fine tune it. Okay? And I'll show you how to do that. Now this is what you might call the intricate part, which is actually attaching the time of flight sensor inside the cap that we've already hollowed out. We've got the time of flight sensor, the cap. I've got 3 40 by 40 screws, well, bolts at this point, but they also, I'll be threading this, so there'll be screws. I've got 3 bolts that go on the end, and these are the self-locking bolts. You know, they got that small plastic piece on the inside that causes them to self-lock. A small spring and the appropriate drill bit. And I've got a 4 by 40 tap. And so what will happen now is the first thing, I've got another appropriate drill bit, because what I'll need to do is I need to drill a hole in my time of flight sensor. And I'm going to drill that hole right here so it's opposing. I'll have a triangle of 3 screws, and on the back side I'll have 3 springs. And on the back of those springs with the lock nuts on this end, if I tighten it, it'll screw down in the lid and depress. And if I loosen it, it'll come up. So, and they don't have to be that long. So that's what I'm going to do now. There. Now, I didn't get that quite in the center where I want it, but that'll be adequate. Now, for those of you who are electrical geniuses, the first thing you're going to notice, you're going to say, "Yeah, well, he just drilled through that." So there may be a connection. You know, these are actually wire connected to here. And when I put my 440 screw through there and I put my bolt on the other side, am I going to make contact between any of these points and short it out? Well, yeah, there's always that potential, but we're going to remove that potential by covering that with a piece of black tape. So we're going to insulate that. We're going to insulate those from the hole. Okay? My next step is to place this, and I know that it's going to be in the center. If I put it in the center on the top, it has to be in the center on the bottom. So I place it in the center on the top, and that's where I'm going to drill these small holes with the small drill bit to fit my tap so I can add my 4 by 40 screws. And if you just hold that in place, and drill your holes. So now I have the 3 holes ready for my tap. So the way a tap works is it starts off with a small point and it gets gradually larger. But as you turn it, it starts to cut the threads. So the way to do this is to turn it, well, start feel some resistance, then you back off, then you turn it. And you got to turn it so that it's perpendicular, of course straight. Turn it, back off, turn it as it cuts threads. The reason that you back off is because you want to remove any of that material that it's cutting, in order to leave threads. And we'll do this to each one of those holes. And that's the first one completed. And then you'll notice that very nicely that screw screws right into that cap. So now that cap in essence has become a threaded base for this screw to screw in or screw out. Now, I'll screw these all the way down so that they are protruding on the inside, and the purpose of that is because now I have to place the spring on, and then the time of flight sensor, and of course, my lock nuts on the very end of that, and that will make it one complete unit. Small spring. And I just need to cut these about the same size for each one. And then again, since I've got screws that I'm capable of using in order to either tighten or loosen this, and the springs are going to work in my favor, it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly the same size. There's one piece. And I'll cut that edge off. And number 3. So now we just place our springs inside. I cut a really small piece of electrical tape that will go across these solder connectors and wrap around it so that protects them from any contact with any metal. Now, place my sensor, which should be oriented the same way the screws are. There we go. And then add my lock nuts to the end of those. Yes, they're small, so it's a lot easier said than done. Now we grab a hold of those, of course, and then screw our screws down until it meets that nylon portion, which is what locks that screw in place. And you'll feel it when you get the there it is, you'll feel the resistance. One time of flight sensor mounted and wired inside the cap. Well, I hope that was instructive enough to get you started, at least to get you to build the head of our parrot head. Because in the very end, what we want this thing to do is talk to us. And it will actually do that. The next video, we will cover the actual wiring process itself. And then on the very final video, we'll go through the programming, because that was a little tedious. But that's okay. You can get through this. Happy distilling.